This past week, I was privileged to attend the Festival of Homiletics. And like so many events, this year's Festival of Homiletics was a hybrid event. So rather than travel down to Denver, I was able to attend the festival online and wallow in the wisdom of some renowned preachers. And I must confess that I registered for the event out of a sense of loyalty to my profession. COVID has dealt a huge blow to so many organizations, and every registration helps. Besides, an old preacher like me can always use some new ideas. Unfortunately, the theme of the festival did not bode well for my enthusiasm for the event. But come Monday morning, coffee in hand, I tuned in from the comfort of my home office, even if my expectations were lowered by the festival's theme, which was after the storm, preaching and trauma. I remember scoffing to myself. Those Americans sure do love the drama of a trauma, as I steeled myself for the inevitable sensationalizing of the multitude of traumas we have all experienced over the past few years. I was unmoved by the idea of spending a week going back over the turmoil created by COVID, antivaxxers, white supremacy, climate change, war in the Ukraine, economic woes, and the impending demise of Roe versus Wade. But preachers, we are trained to approach the homiletical task with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. So even though these days it's the Bible in one hand and our device of choice in the other hand, the news of the day is part of our stock and trade. So I expected the endless list of the world's traumas to dominate the dozen or so sermons and lectures, because life's traumas loom large in our business, and Lord knows this year has been a doozy. What I didn't expect was the wallop which hit me as preacher after preacher pierced the armor which I've been wearing since COVID first showed us its ugliness. What I didn't expect were the endless floods of tears as I heaved my way from one ugly cry to the next. In between the sermons, the lectures, and the workshops, I found myself adding my own Canadian traumas to the colossal list of trauma, the unmarked graves of Indigenous children, the hatred and the division inspired by the truck convoy, the floods, and the melting ice cap, and our own brand of political divisions, not to mention the reality of church closings of congregations whose demise was hastened by endless lockdowns, together with my own concerns about the future of this beloved congregation. I knew if I let myself, I would dissolve in a puddle of tears which my own trauma was creating. So I added more and more armor to my weary soul, and I resolved to simply cut it out. My British heritage was gonna win. My stiff upper lip was not gonna let me dissolve into a puddle in which I knew I would drown. After all, I had work to do, trauma or no trauma. So with my shield in hand, I girded my loins, dried my tears, steadied my breath, and read this week's assigned gospel so that I could begin my own preparations to preach today. Trauma be damned. I'm not going to go there. So hear the words of our gospel as it's recorded by the anonymous gospel storyteller we know as John. Judas, not Judas Iscariot, said, "Rabbi, why is it that you reveal yourself to us and not to the whole world?" Jesus answered, "Those who love me will be true to my word, and Abba God will love them, and we will come to them and make our dwelling place with them. Those who don't love me don't keep my words. Yet the message you hear is not mine. It comes from Abba God, who sent me. This much have I said to you while I was still with you, but the Paraclete, the Holy Spirit, whom Abba God will send in my name, will instruct you in everything, and she will remind you of all that I told you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. But the kind of peace I give you is not like the world's peace. Don't let your hearts be distressed. Don't be fearful. You've heard me say, I am going away, but I will return. If you really loved me, you would rejoice, because I am going to Abba God, for Abba is greater than I. I tell you this now before it happens, so that when it happens, you will believe me. This is the gospel of our God. Thanks be to all that is holy. After reading that, it was all I could do to hold on to myself through one of the ugliest cries I have allowed myself in a very long time. And when my heaving was done, all that was left was my own yes, please. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Yes, please, Jesus, I'll take a big dollop of peace right now, if you please. I know, I'm the preacher, and my job, my calling, my vocation is all about proclaiming the very peace which Jesus promises. But just like you, just like our fellow humans all over the globe, we have been traumatized and traumatized and traumatized again and again. And we are a traumatized people. And we don't find it easy to discover the peace that we long for. How can we? No amount of platitudes or pretty words or charming sentiments or skilled articulations or even powerful sermons can heal the wounds of the traumatized. I did learn something new about trauma from a festival workshop led by a preacher I admire, a Lutheran one at that. From Nadia Bolz-Weber, I learned the phrase complex trauma. Complex trauma describes the condition of those who have been exposed to multiple traumatic events over the course of a long period of time. For more than 2 years now, we have been exposed to multiple traumatic events which have allowed us precious little space in the midst of our world's turmoil. People suffering from complex trauma can experience what some call emotional flashback, in which you have intense feelings that you originally felt during the initial trauma, such as fear, sadness, despair, guilt, or shame. Some of the symptoms of complex trauma include difficulty controlling your emotions, periods of losing attention and concentration, physical symptoms such as headaches, dizziness, chest pains, and stomach aches. Prolonged exposure to multiple traumatic events leading to complex trauma, if left untreated, can lead to complex traumatic stress disorder. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, nor am I a trained psychologist, but I am a lowly preacher who is tasked with helping the afflicted find a little peace. That's peace, period, not peace of mind. Alas, the peace which I am tasked with proclaiming is the peace which Jesus promises. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. But the kind of peace I give you is not like the world's peace. And as I said before, yes, please, Jesus, I'll take a dollop, a double dose of that peace, if you please. But the news didn't get any better this week. There are more unmarked indigenous graves. War continues to rage on in the Ukraine. Our political divisions continue as our own right-wingers mimic our American neighbors. The floods and fires of climate change are eclipsed by yesterday's storm damage, not to mention the vivid images of monkeypox on our own doorstep. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, but the kind of peace I give you is not like the world's peace. Where, Jesus, where can we find this peace you speak of? Where is the peace which is not like the world's peace? We'll take it. We need it. Please, where and how can we find this peace? Late last night, I despaired of ever finding this peace. But the bulletins had already been printed, so it was too late to change the gospel reading, even though I was tempted to do so. So I did what a preacher is trained to do. I looked at the other readings assigned for this day. And there in the 16th chapter of the book of Acts, I was reunited with an old friend, Lydia. Lydia is one of the many mothers of Christianity. Lydia is actually the first convert from Europe to Christianity. Lydia is the founder and a leader in the church at Philippi. Lydia is described as a God-fearer, a worshiper of God, and a dealer in purple. According to the story in Acts, two men, Paul and Silas, meet a woman and end up going home with her. Scandalous though this may have been, Lydia, a professional woman of considerable means, is discovered down by the riverside. What is the storyteller trying to tell us? Paul and Silas had traveled to Philippi to proclaim the gospel. As self-respecting Jewish men, they looked first for the synagogue. But in order to have a synagogue, you must have 10 men to gather for prayer. Philippi couldn't muster that. Alas, without 10 men, the synagogue is closed. So the women who wanted to gather for prayer, they would meet down by the riverside. They would meet for prayer down by the riverside. And so Paul and Silas would have known this, and they went down to the riverside, and they proclaimed the gospel. And they were also invited by Lydia into her home. Imagine two strange men invited into a woman's home. Out of such a scandalous event, the church at Philippi is born. As I reacquainted myself with Lydia's story, two things jumped out at me: the riverside and the color purple. Visions of Celie and Shug from Alice Walker's The Color Purple came to mind, and I heard Shug quietly declare, "I think it pisses God off if you walk by the color purple in a field somewhere and you don't notice it." To which Celie asks, God, just want to be loved like it say in the Bible? To which Shug responds, "Celie, everything just want to be loved. Sing and dance and holler, just trying to be loved." The riverside and the color purple, the beauty of the earth and love. Therein lies the peace which the world with all its trauma cannot give us, the peace which surpasses understanding. Down by the riverside, in the meadows, the forests, the fields, the mountains, the oceans, the beauty of the earth, and in the love we have for one another, it is there where we shall find the peace to heal our wounded souls. In the friendship, in the companionship, in the love we have for the earth and for one another. It's love itself which provides the peace we long for. Early this morning, as the sun was actually trying to rise behind the clouds, I sat down to write this sermon. and I could hear birds singing. The doves were coo-cooing as I remembered the peace which comes as a pure gift from creation herself, together with the peace which has been created by the love of friends, family, neighbors, and lovers. And I remembered that peace is not just a noun describing a state of being which we long for. Peace is also a verb, a way of being in the world, which moves us to be love in the midst of whatever trauma the world dishes up. It is in piecing itself that we discover the peace we long for. Love is the peace we long for, the peace the world cannot give, the peace which comes as pure gift from creation herself and from the love we share with creation's creatures. Love is our peace. Yes, please. And thank you very much for being the love which is the peace our world longs for. Let us continue to be that love. Let us be the love which heals all trauma. Let us be that peace. Shalom. Peace, dear ones. Shalom.